My name is Colin, 32 years old, and I work as a software engineer in Chicago. This morning, I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. 19 missed calls from my family. 6 months ago, I walked out of my parents' house after the worst argument of my life. My sister had screamed that I ruined their lives. My mother said they'd be happier without me. I didn't fight back. I just left quietly. Now, after months of silence, something serious must have happened. Before I tell you what I discovered when I finally called back, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about how I found myself after losing everyone else. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in the suburbs of Chicago. Our family consisted of 5 people. My father, Richard, 56, a construction manager with perpetually calloused hands. My mother, Diane, 54, who worked as an administrative assistant at a local elementary school. My older sister, Melissa, 35, who became a successful lawyer. My younger sister, Stephanie, 28, who floated between jobs in retail and hospitality. And me, Colin, sandwiched in the middle at 32. Our house wasn't particularly large or luxurious, but it was comfortable enough. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a basement where Dad kept his tools, and a small backyard where Mom attempted to grow vegetables every summer with limited success. The walls were lined with family photos, but I always noticed something peculiar about them. In nearly every picture, I was either partially cut off at the edge or standing slightly apart from everyone else. It was a perfect visual representation of how I felt growing up. Present, but somehow invisible. Being the middle child, I always felt caught between 2 worlds. Melissa was the star of the family, the one who brought home perfect report cards and trophies from debate competitions. She was decisive, articulate, and ambitious from a young age. Everyone knew she was destined for greatness, and our parents never hid their pride in her accomplishments. Stephanie, on the other hand, was the baby of the family. 7 years younger than me, she was adorable, outgoing, and naturally charming. She could wrap Dad around her little finger with a smile, and Mom was always quick to excuse her mistakes as part of growing up. While she wasn't academically inclined like Melissa, her social skills and charisma made her popular and well-liked by everyone. And then there was me. I was smart but shy, good at math and science, but not exceptional like Melissa. I wasn't outgoing and charming like Stephanie either. I was just average. Or at least, that's how I felt whenever Dad would compare my B+ to Melissa's A, or when Mom would rush to attend Stephanie's dance recital but forget about my science fair. Colin, why can't you apply yourself like your sister? Dad would ask, after parent-teacher conferences. You should be more like Melissa, became a common refrain throughout my childhood. I learned early on that the easiest way to navigate our family dynamic was to become the peacekeeper. When Dad and Melissa butted heads over her college choices, I mediated their arguments. When Mom was stressed about work, I would quietly help with dinner or clean up without being asked. I became the person who smoothed over conflicts and kept things running. I vividly remember one Christmas when I was 14. Stephanie, who was 7 at the time, had asked for an expensive dollhouse. I had saved up for months to buy a new gaming console. When Christmas morning came, Stephanie threw a tantrum because the dollhouse wasn't exactly the model she wanted. To stop her crying and save Christmas dinner, Mom asked if I would give Stephanie some money from my savings to buy the right dollhouse. I reluctantly agreed, watching my own plans disappear. No one seemed to notice or care about my sacrifice. "That's so sweet of you, Colin," Mom said. But her attention was already back on comforting Stephanie. The real problem started when I was 16. Dad's construction company went through a rough patch during the economic downturn. Bills started piling up, and the atmosphere at home grew tense with financial worry. Dad would come home frustrated and exhausted, often taking his stress out on us with sharp words and impatient outbursts. I was in my junior year of high school when I received an offer for a partial scholarship to attend a prestigious engineering program at Northwestern University. It would have been a dream come true, but it would still leave significant costs uncovered. Around the same time, Dad lost a major contract and came home looking defeated in a way I had never seen before. That night, I overheard my parents arguing about money in their bedroom. Mom was crying, worried about how they would pay the mortgage. Something shifted inside me. Without telling anyone about my scholarship, I decided to take a part-time job at a local electronics store. I told my parents I would help with some bills while continuing my studies. "You don't have to do that, son," Dad said. But the relief in his eyes was unmistakable. "It's fine. I want to learn about business anyway," I lied, trying to sound casual about giving up my free time and watching my grades slip as a consequence. The part-time job soon became nearly full-time hours. I would go to school, then work until closing time at 9, come home to eat a reheated dinner alone, and then stay up until midnight or later trying to keep up with homework. My grades began to suffer, but I was bringing home regular paychecks that helped keep the family afloat. When the time came for college decisions, I quietly declined the Northwestern scholarship and enrolled at a state university, closer to home, where I could continue working and commuting from home to save money. No one in my family questioned this decision, or seemed to realize what I had given up. "That's practical thinking, Colin," was all Dad said when I told him my choice. I watched as Melissa graduated from law school with honors, and as my parents scraped together money to throw her an elaborate graduation party. I stood in the background of the photos, the quiet brother who helped serve drinks to her friends and colleagues. All these sacrifices might have been worth it if anyone had acknowledged them. But as years went by, my contributions became expected rather than appreciated. I became the reliable son, the one who would always be there, always help out, always put others first. It wasn't a role I had chosen, but it was the one assigned to me, and for a long time, I accepted it without question. College years were a balancing act that often felt impossible to maintain. While other students were enjoying campus life, joining clubs, and making lifetime friendships, I was rushing between classes and shifts at the electronics store, which had promoted me to assistant manager thanks to my reliability. Every morning, I would wake up at 5:30 to beat the traffic, attend classes until early afternoon, then work until 9 or 10 at night. My small university wasn't known for its engineering program, but it was affordable and close to home. The campus was a 30-minute drive from our house, which meant I could save on dormitory costs by continuing to live at home. My bedroom became less of a personal space and more of a pit stop between responsibilities. "Colin, can you pick up Stephanie from soccer practice on your way home?" Mom would ask, not considering that it was a 20-minute detour. "Colin, the bathroom sink is leaking. Can you look at it before you leave for work?" Dad would request, adding another task to my already packed morning. I rarely complained. After all, they were still letting me live at home rent-free, though I paid for my own tuition, books, car, insurance, and contributed to the household bills. It seemed like a fair trade-off at the time. During my sophomore year, Stephanie was preparing for college. Unlike me, she had her heart set on a private university in California with a strong arts program. The tuition was astronomical. "We just don't have the money, sweetie," Mom explained gently to Stephanie one evening at dinner. Stephanie's face crumpled. "But it's my dream school. Everyone else gets to go where they want." I felt a pang of empathy, remembering my own abandoned scholarship. Before I could think it through, I heard myself saying, "I could help." 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. "I've been saving some money," I continued, though the savings were meant for my own tuition the following semester. I could contribute to Stephanie's first-year expenses. The gratitude on my parents' faces was immediate and overwhelming. Stephanie jumped up and hugged me tight. "You're the best brother ever," she exclaimed. For that moment, it felt worth it. But that moment was brief. By the time Stephanie's second semester rolled around, my contribution had become an expectation rather than a gift. I ended up taking out student loans to cover both her education and my own, a financial burden that would follow me for years to come. Despite the heavy workload and financial stress, I managed to graduate with a degree in computer science. The job market for tech professionals was strong, and I landed a position at a software company in downtown Chicago. The salary was good, much better than what I had been making at the electronics store. My first instinct was to move out and find my own place, to finally have some independence. I even looked at a few apartments, including a small one-bedroom in Lincoln Park that I particularly liked. But then Dad's truck broke down, requiring expensive repairs, and Mom mentioned that the house needed a new roof. "It's just so hard to make ends meet these days," she sighed one evening. So, I stayed. My first major purchase with my new salary wasn't something for myself, but a used truck for Dad. I continued living at home, now paying a more substantial amount toward the mortgage and utilities. I told myself it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet financially. But temporary stretched into years. As my career progressed and my salary increased, so did my family's expectations. What started as helping with essential expenses evolved into financing lifestyles. Dad, who had always been frugal, suddenly wanted to renovate the kitchen. Mom began talking about retiring early from her school job. Stephanie, who had graduated but struggled to find steady work in her field, asked for help with her apartment rent in California. "It's just until I get established," she promised. "The industry is really competitive." Then came Melissa's divorce. After building a successful career as a corporate lawyer, her marriage to another attorney fell apart. She moved back to Chicago with her 2 children, seeking a fresh start. Initially, she stayed with our parents, but the house was crowded and tensions ran high. "Colin," Mom said during a family dinner, "Melissa really needs her own place for the kids. The school district here isn't great for them." I knew what was coming next. "She's found a perfect house in Naperville," Mom continued. "But she needs help with the down payment, since the divorce settlement isn't finalized." The help Mom was referring to was $80,000, nearly all of my savings. When I hesitated, the reaction was immediate. "After everything this family has done for you," Dad said, his voice sharp with disappointment, "you've been living here practically rent-free." I wanted to point out that I had been paying more than my fair share for years, but the words stuck in my throat. 2 weeks later, I wrote the check for Melissa's down payment. She promised to pay me back once the divorce was settled. I never saw that money again. The requests kept coming. When Stephanie wrecked her car, the family expected me to help her buy a new one. Not just any reliable used car, but a brand new compact SUV because she needs something safe. When Dad decided to take early retirement, it was assumed I would cover the gap in their income until his pension and Social Security kicked in. When Mom wanted to visit her sister in Florida twice a year, guess who paid for the plane tickets? I began to feel less like a son and brother, and more like a walking ATM. Each time I tried to establish boundaries or suggest that I might want to use my money for my own life, I was met with guilt trips and accusations of selfishness. "Family comes first, Colin," was Dad's mantra. "That's how we raised you. After all we've sacrificed for you," Mom would remind me, conveniently forgetting all I had sacrificed for them. The breaking point nearly came when Stephanie called from California, sobbing about credit card debt she had accumulated. $30,000 spent on clothes, trips, and restaurants, living a lifestyle far beyond her means as a part-time gallery assistant. "I might have to declare bankruptcy," she cried. "It would ruin my credit for years." For the first time, I found myself saying, "I can't help you with this, Stephanie. This isn't an emergency. These were choices you made." The family uproar that followed made me back down. I agreed to pay off half her debt if she attended financial counseling. She reluctantly agreed, but made it clear she felt I was being cruel by imposing conditions on my help. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom at age 31, surrounded by trophies and posters from a life I never got to fully live, I felt a deep, quiet anger beginning to simmer. But I still wasn't ready to break free. Not yet. It would take meeting someone outside this dysfunctional dynamic to help me see just how abnormal my situation had become. I met Sarah on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I had ducked into a small coffee shop near my office to escape a sudden downpour and to troubleshoot a server issue remotely. The place was packed with other rain refugees, and the only available seat was at a small table where a woman with curly brown hair was grading papers. "Mind if I sit here?" I asked, balancing my laptop bag and dripping umbrella. She looked up with warm hazel eyes and smiled. "Only if you don't mind occasional sighs of frustration. Third-grade spelling tests are an emotional roller coaster." I laughed a genuine laugh, something that had become rare for me. I promised not to judge any 8-year-old's creative approach to the English language. Her name was Sarah Parker, 31, an elementary school teacher with a passion for children's literature and a laugh that made the corners of her eyes crinkle in the most endearing way. We talked until the rain stopped, exchanged numbers, and made plans to meet for dinner that weekend. Dating Sarah was like stepping into a different world. She lived in a cozy one-bedroom apartment, filled with books and plants. She had a close relationship with her parents, but with healthy boundaries. They called once a week, visited occasionally, but never made demands or expected her to prioritize their needs over her own. My mom always says that the best gift we can give our parents is to live a fulfilling life, Sarah told me one evening as we cooked dinner together in her kitchen. The concept was so foreign to me that I nearly cut my finger while chopping onions. For the first time, I had something in my life that was just for me. Sarah and I would spend weekends exploring different neighborhoods in Chicago, trying new restaurants, or simply lounging in her apartment watching old movies. With her, I rediscovered parts of myself that had been buried under years of family obligations. My love for coding just for fun, my interest in astronomy, my terrible but enthusiastic singing voice. Of course, balancing this new relationship with my family's expectations proved challenging. The first time I missed a Sunday dinner at my parents' house to attend a concert with Sarah, my phone exploded with texts. "Are you okay? Should we call hospitals?" From Mom. "Dad is really disappointed," from Melissa. "Way to be selfish," from Stephanie. I apologized profusely and spent the next week making up for it by helping Dad repair the back deck and doing extra grocery shopping for Mom. The pattern continued any time I prioritized Sarah or myself. I had to pay for it with additional service to the family. Despite these challenges, our relationship blossomed. After 2 years together, I knew Sarah was the person I wanted to spend my life with. She had shown me what healthy love looked like: supportive, but not sacrificial; close, but not enmeshed. I planned a proposal at the Adler Planetarium, her favorite place in the city, under a sky full of stars, both projected and real, visible through the lakefront windows. When she said yes, I felt a happiness so pure it was almost painful. We celebrated with champagne and called her parents, who were thrilled and immediately offered to host an engagement party. Then we called my family. The silence on the other end of the line after I shared our news was deafening. "Well," Mom finally said, her voice tight, "that's certainly sudden." "We've been together for 2 years, Mom," I reminded her. "Yes, but marriage is such a big step, and we barely know Sarah." That wasn't true. I had brought Sarah to family events repeatedly, though my family had never made much effort to welcome her or get to know her. Still, I had hoped that my happiness would matter to them. Later that week, when Sarah and I visited my parents' house to share the news in person and show off the ring, the reception was cold at best, hostile at worst. "So I guess now you'll be too busy with your new wife to help your family," Melissa said, not even attempting to disguise the bitterness in her voice. "I'm still going to be around," I assured her. "Right," Stephanie scoffed. "Until she convinces you we're not worth your time anymore." "Sarah would never do that," I defended, feeling my chest tighten. "They all say that," Dad muttered, not meeting my eyes. "But once you have a wife, Everything changes. The accusations continued throughout dinner. According to my family, Sarah was taking me away from them. She was changing me. I had become selfish since meeting her. Mom wondered aloud if Sarah was after my money, a particularly ironic concern given how freely my family had helped themselves to my finances over the years. Sarah sat beside me, her smile growing more strained by the minute, but she remained polite and gracious. It wasn't until we were in the car driving home that she let her true feelings show. "Colin, what just happened in there wasn't normal," she said quietly. "The way they treat you, the things they expect from you, none of it is healthy." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "They're just worried about change. They'll come around." Sarah turned to look at me, her expression serious. "Will they? Or will they just find new ways to make you feel guilty for having a life of your own?" That question hung between us for days afterward. I wanted to believe my family would eventually accept Sarah and our relationship, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Over the next few months, the situation deteriorated. Melissa and Stephanie began a campaign of passive-aggressive comments and backhanded compliments whenever Sarah was around. "That dress is so brave for your body type," Stephanie told Sarah at a family barbecue. "It's nice that Colin found someone who doesn't mind his long work hours," Melissa remarked at another gathering. Meanwhile, the financial demands continued. When I mentioned that Sarah and I were saving for a down payment on a house, Dad immediately brought up the roof repairs he had been putting off. When we talked about wedding plans, Mom hinted that Melissa's oldest needed braces that insurance wouldn't fully cover. Sarah never directly asked me to cut ties with my family, but she did encourage me to establish boundaries. "You don't have to answer every call immediately," she suggested. "You don't have to say yes to every request." I started taking her advice in small ways. I limited my visits to my parents' house to once a week. I began screening my calls and responding to non-emergency requests with, "I'll need to check my schedule," instead of an automatic yes. I opened a separate savings account specifically for our future home and wedding, money that I would not touch for family emergencies. These small acts of independence were met with increasing hostility. The tension built over months, a pressure cooker of resentment and expectation that was bound to explode. And explode it did, on what should have been a happy occasion, the dinner where we planned to discuss our wedding date with my family. The evening of May 15th started with such promise. Sarah had spent hours preparing a special dinner, her grandmother's lasagna recipe, garlic bread from scratch, and a homemade tiramisu for dessert. She wanted to make a good impression, to show my family that she valued their traditions and wanted to create new ones together. We had decided to host the dinner at our apartment, technically my apartment, though Sarah spent most nights there to share our wedding plans in a neutral space. I had cleaned meticulously all morning, arranging fresh flowers on the dining table and setting out the good dishes I rarely used. Sarah arrived early to start cooking, and the apartment soon filled with delicious aromas. I felt nervous, but hopeful. Surely, I thought, they would see how happy Sarah made me. Surely, they would want to share in our joy. My family arrived 45 minutes late. No apologies were offered. "Traffic," was all Dad said as he handed me a bottle of inexpensive wine. Mom immediately began inspecting the apartment, running her finger along shelves, checking for dust, peering into the bathroom with a critical eye. "You should really replace that shower curtain, Colin," she commented. "It looks moldy." It wasn't moldy. Sarah had bought it just 2 months ago. Melissa arrived separately with her 2 children, who immediately began complaining about being hungry and asking if they could watch TV. Stephanie was the last to arrive, dressed as though she was going to a club rather than a family dinner, her expression sour before she even stepped through the door. Sarah greeted everyone warmly, offering drinks and appetizers, trying to create a festive atmosphere. Her efforts were met with lukewarm responses and forced smiles. When she proudly presented her homemade lasagna, Mom asked if it contained garlic, claiming a sudden allergy none of us had ever heard about before. Still, we made it through the main course, with only minor tensions. It wasn't until Sarah brought out the tiramisu and I clinked my glass to make an announcement that things truly fell apart. "Sarah and I have set a date for the wedding," I said, reaching for her hand. "September 10th, just 4 months from now. We found a small venue by the lake that's perfect for an intimate ceremony." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken objections. Mom was the first to speak. "September? That's awfully soon. We couldn't possibly help plan a wedding that quickly. We're keeping it simple," Sarah explained. "Just close family and friends. Maybe 50 people total." 50? Melissa scoffed. "Mom and Dad have more extended family than that alone. Plus all the neighbors and church members who would expect an invitation. We're paying for it ourselves," I clarified. "And we want to keep it small and meaningful." Stephanie put down her fork with a clatter. "Let me guess. This was her idea?" She jerked her head toward Sarah, without looking at her. "It was a decision we made together," I said firmly. "Right." Stephanie rolled her eyes. "Just like it was your decision to miss Dad's birthday last month for her friend's art show. That wasn't—" "You've changed, Colin," Melissa cut in. "You used to care about family. Now it's all about Sarah and what she wants." Sarah tensed beside me but remained silent, letting me handle my family. "I still care about family," I insisted. "But Sarah and I are starting our own family now. That doesn't mean I'm abandoning you all." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Is that what she's been telling you? That we're holding you back? That you need to choose?" "No one's talking about choosing. We've noticed how you've been pulling away," Dad interrupted, his voice gruff. "Fewer visits, always checking your calendar before helping out. That's not the son we raised." The accusations flew faster then, each one cutting deeper than the last. I was ungrateful. I had forgotten where I came from. I cared more about Sarah's happiness than my family's needs. I was selfish for wanting to spend my money on a wedding and a house instead of helping Melissa with her kids' education or supporting Stephanie until she found her passion. I tried to defend myself, to explain that loving Sarah didn't diminish my love for them, that I could have both a marriage and a relationship with my family. But my words fell on deaf ears. The breaking point came when Stephanie, after her third glass of wine, looked directly at Sarah and said, "You know he's only with you because you're the first woman who gave him attention. He'll get tired of you once the novelty wears off." Sarah's face paled, but before she could respond, I stood up so abruptly my chair toppled backward. "That's enough," I said, my voice shaking. "You can attack me all you want, but you will not speak to Sarah that way in our home." Stephanie wasn't finished. "Our home?" She laughed bitterly. "You've ruined our lives, Colin. Everything was fine until you met her." "Fine?" I echoed in disbelief. "You call what we had fine? Me paying for everyone's problems while putting my own life on hold? We'd be happier without you if this is who you've become." Mom snapped, her teary eyes now blazing with anger. The room fell silent. Even Mom looked shocked at what she had said. I looked around at their faces, angry, defensive, entitled, and something inside me finally broke. Or perhaps it finally healed. Without another word, I walked to the door and opened it. "I think dinner is over," I said quietly. "Please leave." "Colin," Dad started, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "Now, please." They left in a flurry of muttered insults and slammed doors. Melissa dragging her confused children. Mom crying dramatically. Dad stone-faced. Stephanie hurling one last, "You'll regret this," over her shoulder. When the door closed behind them, I turned to find Sarah standing in the kitchen doorway, her face streaked with silent tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms. "Don't apologize. Not for this. Never for this." We stood there for a long time, holding each other in the wreckage of our careful plans and shattered hopes. Later that night, after we had cleaned up the half-eaten dinner and put away the dishes, I made a decision. I need some time away from them. I told Sarah, as we sat on the couch, exhausted. I need to figure out who I am without their voices in my head. Sarah nodded, understanding without me having to explain further. The next morning, I sent a brief email to my family. I need space to think about everything that was said last night. Please respect that I won't be in contact for a while. I love you all, but I need to do this for myself. Then I blocked their numbers on my phone, muted their emails, and disconnected from the family group chat. It wasn't a permanent goodbye, but it was a necessary separation. For the first time in my life, I chose my own well-being over family obligation. It felt like both a betrayal and a liberation. The first month without contact with my family was the hardest. Years of conditioning had trained me to check in daily, to respond immediately to texts and calls, to drop everything when a family need arose. Breaking that pattern left me anxious and guilty. I would reach for my phone dozens of times a day out of habit, expecting to see messages demanding my attention. The absence of those demands created a strange emptiness that I didn't know how to fill. Sarah suggested I use this newfound time and mental space for things that brought me joy. I rediscovered my passion for coding, spending evenings working on personal projects instead of solving family crises. I built a small app that tracked astronomical events, combining my love for programming and stargazing. It wasn't commercially viable, but the process of creating something purely for my own satisfaction was revelatory. Work became more fulfilling too. Without the constant drain of family drama, I had energy to invest in my career. I volunteered for challenging projects, mentored junior developers, and even spoke at a local tech conference, something I would have been too exhausted to consider before. My boss noticed the change. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep it up," he told me during my performance review. "Your work has always been solid, but lately it's been exceptional." The validation felt good, but the real transformation was happening at home. Sarah and I found a small house in a quiet neighborhood, just within our budget. It needed work. The kitchen was straight out of the 80s, and the backyard was overgrown, but it was ours. We spent weekends painting walls and planting a garden, creating a space that reflected both of us. No one questioned our color choices or criticized our furniture arrangement. No one made us feel guilty for spending money on new appliances, instead of sending it to relatives. "This is what normal feels like," Sarah said one evening as we sat on our porch swing, watching the sunset. "Building a life together based on mutual support, not obligation." I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Harriet Wilson, a kind but straightforward woman in her 50s, who specialized in family dynamics. In our first session, I explained my situation, half expecting her to tell me I was overreacting or being selfish for cutting off my family. Instead, she said, "What you're describing sounds like a pattern of emotional and financial exploitation that's been normalized in your family system." Her words hit me like a physical force. Exploitation. Not love, not responsibility, not the natural give and take of family life. Exploitation. But they're not bad people. I found myself defending them. "They love me in their way." "I believe that's true," Dr. Wilson nodded. "People can love you and still treat you in harmful ways. The two aren't mutually exclusive." Over the next months, our weekly sessions helped me untangle the complex web of love, guilt, obligation, and resentment that had defined my relationship with my family. I learned about boundaries, what healthy ones looked like, and why they were necessary for all relationships. I explored my tendency to derive self-worth from being needed, and the fear that without my usefulness, I might not be loved at all. "You've spent your life being a human doing, rather than a human being," Dr. Wilson observed in one particularly insightful session. "Your value to your family has been measured by what you provide, not who you are." The work was painful. I cried in sessions more than once, mourning for the unconditional love I had never received and the years spent trying to earn approval that always remained just out of reach. But alongside the grief came clarity. I began to see patterns in my family's behavior that had been invisible to me before. How Melissa's achievements were celebrated while mine were acknowledged with a nod at best. How Stephanie's failures were cushioned with support and excuses, while my successes came with new expectations. How my parents positioned themselves as sacrificing everything for their children while simultaneously depending on me financially. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to be my rock, offering support without enabling my tendency towards self-sacrifice. She celebrated my small victories, saying no to an unreasonable request from a colleague, spending money on a hobby without guilt, expressing an opinion without worrying about everyone's reaction. She understood that my healing wasn't just about my family, but about rewriting deeply ingrained patterns of behavior. Wedding planning continued, though we adjusted our timeline to give me space to work through these revelations. We pushed the date back to the following spring, not out of deference to my family's objections, but because I wanted to be more fully present when we took our vows. Throughout these 6 months, I did receive messages from my family. Though I had blocked their numbers, emails still came through to a folder I checked occasionally. The tone evolved over time, following a predictable pattern that Dr. Wilson helped me recognize. First came anger and accusations. How dare you ignore us after everything we've done for you? This just proves how selfish you've become. Then manipulation and guilt. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof because of the stress you're causing. Melissa had to take a second job because you're not helping with the kids' tuition anymore. When these tactics didn't work, they shifted to minimizing. You're overreacting to a little family disagreement. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're upset. Finally, as the months stretched on, came bargaining. Can't we just forget all this unpleasantness? Family should always come first, no matter what. Not once did any message contain a genuine apology or acknowledgement of how they had treated me. Not once did anyone ask how I was doing or express interest in my perspective. Every communication was about getting me back into the fold, back into my role as provider and peacekeeper. Sarah never pushed me to respond or to maintain the separation. This is your journey, she said. You'll know when and if you're ready to reconnect. By the 6-month mark, I had achieved a level of peace I'd never known before. Our house had become a home. Our wedding plans were taking shape. I had received a promotion at work, partly due to the innovative project I'd spearheaded. I was sleeping better, laughing more, and experiencing joy without the undercurrent of anxiety that had been my constant companion. I wasn't naive enough to think I was fully healed. Dr. Wilson reminded me that patterns established over decades don't disappear in months. But I had tools now: boundaries, self-awareness, a supportive partner, and the experience of living on my own terms. You're ready to encounter your family again from this new position of strength, Dr. Wilson suggested during a session in late November. Not to return to old patterns, but to test whether a new, healthier relationship is possible. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I was considering it. The holidays were approaching, and despite everything, I missed them. Not the dysfunction or the demands, but the core of who we were to each other beneath all that. I wondered if there was any way to salvage those connections without sacrificing my newfound peace. Then, on a cold December morning, my phone lit up with 19 missed calls. The notifications glowed ominously on my screen when I woke up. 19 missed calls from various family members. 7 from Mom, 5 from Melissa, 4 from Dad's phone, though he rarely called himself, and 3 from Stephanie. They had come through overnight, starting around 2 in the morning. My first reaction was irritation. Even after 6 months of silence, they still didn't respect my boundaries. But then anxiety crept in. 19 calls in the span of a few hours suggested something more serious than another attempt to pull me back into the fold. That's unusual, Sarah said when I showed her the screen. She was already dressed for work, her teacher tote bag packed for the day. Do you think something's happened? I scrolled through my notifications, looking for voicemails or texts that might have gotten through my blocks. There were none. I'm not sure, I admitted. But this many calls isn't normal, even for them. The old Colin would have immediately called back, panicked and apologetic for not being available in the middle of the night. The new Colin took a deep breath and thought about what Dr. Wilson would advise. I think I should call back, I said finally. But I'm going to be careful about getting pulled into drama. Sarah nodded. That sounds like a balanced approach. Do you want me to stay while you call? I shook my head. You'll be late for school. I'll call you afterward and let you know what's happening. After Sarah left, I sat at our kitchen table, staring at my phone. I decided to call my mother first, as she had left the most messages. My hand trembled slightly as I unblocked her number and dialed. She answered on the first ring. Colin? Her voice was raspy, as if she had been crying. Oh, thank God. Mom, what's going on? I saw all the missed calls. It's your father, she said. And my stomach dropped. He had a heart attack last night. He's in Northwestern Memorial. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. For all our complicated history, the thought of losing my father hit me like a physical blow. Is he okay? I managed to ask. He's stable now, Mom said, her voice breaking. They did an angioplasty to clear the blockage. But it was serious, Colin. We almost lost him. I closed my eyes, processing this information. I'll come to the hospital, I said. I'll be there in about an hour. After hanging up, I sat motionless at the kitchen table. A part of me wondered if this was another manipulation tactic. A medical crisis manufactured to force me back into contact. But I immediately felt ashamed of the thought. Heart attacks were serious. People didn't fake them to win family arguments. Still, I called the hospital directly to confirm that Richard Thompson had indeed been admitted last night. The patient information line confirmed he was there, listed in stable condition. This was real. I texted Sarah the news, and then called Dr. Wilson's office to leave a message about the situation. She had given me her cell phone number for emergencies, but this didn't quite qualify. Still, I wanted her guidance before seeing my family again. To my surprise, she called back within minutes. This is an important moment, Colin, she said after I explained the situation. A health crisis often brings families together, but it can also reinforce unhealthy dynamics if you're not careful. What should I do? I asked, feeling suddenly like a lost child rather than a 32-year-old man. Go to the hospital, she said, without hesitation. Your father needs you, and you would regret not being there. But remember your boundaries. You're there to support your father in his medical crisis, not to slip back into your old role as the family fixer. She suggested some specific phrases I could use if family members tried to pull me into old patterns or brought up the estrangement in inappropriate ways. We scheduled an emergency session for the following day, and I felt better having a safety net in place. As I drove to the hospital, memories of my father flooded my mind. Not all were bad. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, his strong hands steady on the seat until I found my balance. I remembered working alongside him one summer to build a treehouse for Stephanie, the rare pride in his eyes when I figured out a clever solution for the roof design. I remembered his quiet presence at my college graduation, the awkward but sincere clap on the shoulder as he said, "Good job, son." These moments had been islands in a sea of disappointment and unmet expectations, but they were real. Whatever else had happened between us, he was my father. And now he was lying in a hospital bed, mortality suddenly very real and present. The hospital parking garage was crowded, and I circled for nearly 20 minutes before finding a spot. The delay increased my anxiety. By the time I reached the cardiac care unit waiting room, my heart was racing. I saw them immediately. Mom, looking older and more frail than I remembered. Her hair uncombed, and her clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. Melissa, efficient as always, even in crisis, typing on her phone while simultaneously talking to what looked like a doctor. Her 2 children were not present, presumably at school. And Stephanie, curled up in a chair, her makeup smudged from crying. They didn't notice me at first. I stood in the doorway, observing this tableau of family concern, feeling simultaneously part of it and apart from it. Then Mom looked up. "Colin," she gasped, and the others turned. I steeled myself for accusations or dramatic scenes. Instead, Mom simply rose and crossed the room to embrace me. She felt smaller in my arms than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "He's going to be so relieved." Melissa approached next, her professional demeanor cracking to show genuine emotion. "The doctor says he's going to be okay, but it was close. Too close." Stephanie remained in her chair, watching me warily, as if unsure of my reception. I gave her a small nod, which she returned after a moment's hesitation. "Can I see him?" I asked. "They're only allowing 1 visitor at a time for 15 minutes each hour," Mom explained. "I just came out. Melissa was going to go next. But you should go instead." Melissa nodded her agreement, a gesture that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. A nurse led me to Dad's room. I wasn't prepared for the sight that greeted me. My father, always larger than life in my mind, looked diminished in the hospital bed. Tubes and wires connected him to various machines that beeped steadily. His skin had a grayish tinge, and his normally neat hair was matted against his forehead. His eyes were closed when I entered, and I thought he might be sleeping. But at the sound of my footsteps, he opened them, blinking to focus in the dim light. "Colin?" His voice was weak, barely audible. "Hey, Dad." I moved to his bedside, unsure whether to touch him or maintain distance. He solved the dilemma by reaching for my hand. His grip was weaker than I remembered, but still solid. "You came," he said simply. Of course I came. We sat in silence for a moment, the beeping machines providing a rhythmic backdrop. Then, to my astonishment, I saw tears forming in my father's eyes. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." In all my life, I had never heard my father apologize to anyone, least of all to me. The words hung in the air between us, fragile and precious. "When you feel something crushing your chest," he continued, his voice strained, "when you think you might be taking your last breaths, you see things clearly. I saw how we treated you, how I treated you. I didn't stand up for you that night. I didn't stand up for you so many times." I swallowed hard against the lump forming in my throat. "Dad, you don't have to." "I do," he interrupted with surprising firmness. "I do have to say it. You were a good son, are a good son, better than we deserved. And I was too proud, too stuck in my ways to see what we were doing to you." The tears spilled over now, tracking down his weathered cheeks into his gray stubble. I had never seen my father cry, not even at his own father's funeral. "I don't want to die with you thinking I didn't love you," he said. "Because I do. I didn't know how to show it right." Something broke open inside me, not in the shattering way of our final dinner, but in the healing way of a long-infected wound finally lanced. I squeezed his hand. "I love you too, Dad. We'll figure this out. But right now, you need to focus on getting better." He nodded, closing his eyes briefly as if gathering strength. "Sarah. Is she here?" "No, she's teaching today. But she sends her best wishes for your recovery." "Bring her next time," he said. "I owe her an apology too." The nurse returned then, gently informing me that my time was up. As I prepared to leave, Dad held onto my hand for an extra moment. "We'll do better," he promised. "If you give us a chance, we'll do better." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and left the room with emotions I couldn't yet name swirling inside me. In the hallway, I took a moment to compose myself before returning to the waiting room. My father's apology was unexpected and seemed genuine, but I knew from therapy that one emotional moment didn't erase years of dysfunctional patterns. Real change would require sustained effort from everyone, including me. Still, it was a start. A crack in the wall that had seemed impenetrable 6 months ago. As I made my way back to my waiting family, I felt cautiously hopeful for the first time since walking out of that disastrous dinner. The waiting room had filled with more relatives and family friends in my absence. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, was there with her husband. Dad's poker buddies, Frank and Howard, stood awkwardly in the corner. Even our old neighbor, Mrs. Daniels, had come, clutching a casserole dish covered in foil. This was typical of health crises in our community. Everyone showed up with food and good intentions, sometimes making the situation more stressful with their well-meaning presence. I steeled myself for the inevitable questions about my absence these past months. The curious looks, the whispered speculations. As I approached our family's corner of the waiting room, Mom stood up. "What did he say? How did he seem to you?" "Tired but alert," I reported. "The doctor was right about him being stable. He's going to be okay, I think." Melissa checked her watch. "They said they'd have more information after they review the latest tests." "That should be soon." Stephanie finally spoke directly to me. "So are you staying? Or is this just a quick visit before you disappear again?" There it was, the first shot across the bow. I remembered Dr. Wilson's advice. Acknowledge the feeling, but maintain my boundary. "I understand you're upset about my absence," I said carefully. "But Dad's condition is what matters right now. We can talk about the rest later, in private." Stephanie looked surprised at my measured response. She had clearly expected either defensiveness or capitulation, my two historical patterns. This new approach seemed to throw her off balance. A doctor arrived then, clipboard in hand, looking for the Thompson family. We gathered around as he explained Dad's condition in more detail. The heart attack had been serious, but caught in time. The angioplasty had been successful, opening the blocked artery. Dad would need to make significant lifestyle changes. A heart-healthy diet, regular exercise, stress reduction, and several medications. He would likely remain in the hospital for 3 to 5 days, followed by several weeks of recovery at home. He'll need support during this time, the doctor emphasized. Both physical assistance and emotional encouragement to make these necessary changes. I saw Mom and Melissa exchange meaningful glances. In the past, this would have been my cue to step up, to rearrange my life to become Dad's full-time caretaker. I felt the pull of that old pattern, the instinctive desire to solve the family problem. But I also felt something new, the awareness that I had choices. "I'll help," I said before anyone could volunteer me. "But we should create a schedule that distributes the responsibility among all of us. I can take some days, but not all." Another surprised silence. Then Melissa nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I can work from home 2 days a week. And maybe Aunt Patricia could help too?" Our aunt quickly agreed. Even Stephanie, after some hesitation, offered to handle weekend afternoons. With Dad stable and a preliminary plan in place, the crowd began to disperse. Aunt Patricia convinced Mom to go home for a shower and a proper meal. Melissa left to pick up her children from school. Soon, only Stephanie and I remained in the waiting room. "Want some terrible coffee?" I offered, gesturing toward the hospital cafeteria. She hesitated, then nodded. We walked in uncomfortable silence to the cafeteria, ordered 2 coffees that indeed looked terrible, and found a quiet table in the corner. "So," she began, stirring artificial creamer into her cup. "You're really getting married." It wasn't what I expected her to lead with. "Yes, in the spring. And you're happy? With her?" I studied my sister's face, trying to read her true intentions behind the question. There was wariness there. And something else. Vulnerability, perhaps. "Very happy," I answered honestly. Sarah understands me in ways no one ever has before. Stephanie looked down at her coffee. That dinner, I was horrible to her. To you. I said things I knew would hurt. I waited, giving her space to continue. I was jealous, she admitted finally. You found someone who loves you for you, not for what you can do for them. And it made me realize. She trailed off, blinking rapidly. Realize what? That maybe the way we've treated you isn't how family is supposed to work. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I've been thinking about it a lot since you left, about how much you've done for me, for all of us, and how little we appreciated it. I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, relief, lingering anger, and a tentative hope. I'm not saying this right, Stephanie continued, frustration evident in her voice. I'm not good at apologies. But I am sorry, Colin. Really sorry. I took a deep breath. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Does that mean you forgive us? She asked, a hint of her old expectation that everything could be fixed easily. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, I said, echoing words Dr. Wilson had shared with me. It's a process. I'm willing to start that process. But things can't go back to how they were before. Stephanie nodded slowly. I guess that's fair. She hesitated, then added, I started therapy too, you know. After you left. Mom was a mess. Dad was angry. Melissa was trying to control everything as usual. I just couldn't handle it. My therapist says I have issues with entitlement and emotional regulation. I couldn't help but smile slightly. That sounds about right. She kicked me lightly under the table, a ghost of our old sibling dynamic. Jerk. I'm trying here. I know. And I appreciate it. We finished our coffee, the conversation shifting to safer topics, Dad's recovery. My job. Her latest attempt at finding a career that suited her. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. Over the next 3 days, I visited the hospital regularly. Each visit included time with Dad, whose apology seemed to have opened a door to more honest communication between us. We talked about my work, my house with Sarah, and eventually, tentatively, about the hurt and expectations that had defined our relationship. I always thought I was doing right by you, he confessed during one visit. Pushing you to be strong, to take care of the family. My father never taught me anything else. I know, I said. But I needed something different. He nodded thoughtfully. I see that now. Mom was harder. Her apology, when it finally came, was wrapped in justifications. We only wanted what was best for you, she insisted. Parents make mistakes. Yes, they do, I agreed. But recognizing those mistakes is the first step to fixing them. It took several conversations, some more productive than others, before she began to truly hear me. The breakthrough came when I invited Sarah to join me at the hospital. I had been nervous about this meeting, worried that old hostilities would resurface. But Sarah, compassionate as always, approached my parents with genuine concern for their well-being. Dad, true to his word, apologized to her directly. I judged you unfairly, he told her. I saw you as taking my son away instead of making him happy. I was wrong. Mom watched this interaction closely. Later, when Sarah stepped out to take a phone call, Mom turned to me with tears in her eyes. She really loves you, she said, sounding almost surprised. Not what you can do for her, but you. Yes, I agreed simply. That's how it should be. I want that kind of love for you, Mom said, reaching for my hand. I always did. I got confused about what was important. Can you forgive me for that? It wasn't a perfect apology, but I could hear the sincerity in it. I'm working on it, I told her honestly. And I think we can build something better going forward. Melissa was the most pragmatic about the situation. During a private conversation in the hospital garden, she acknowledged the family dynamics with analytical precision. We took advantage of your good nature. she stated matter-of-factly. I benefited from it directly, especially after my divorce. It wasn't fair, and it wasn't healthy for any of us. Why didn't you see it before? I asked, genuinely curious. She considered the question seriously. Because it worked for me, she admitted. And because it was familiar. Dad did the same with his brothers, Mom with her sisters. It seemed normal. It wasn't normal, I said firmly. No, it wasn't. She sighed. I'm trying to make sure I don't pass these patterns on to my kids. That's why I started paying you back, actually. I blinked in surprise. Paying me back? She nodded. The money you gave me for the down payment. I've been putting payments into your account for the past 3 months. Small amounts, but regular. Didn't you notice? I hadn't checked the account I used to use for family expenses in months. No. I had no idea. Well, check it. I can't repay everything all at once, but I'm committed to making it right. The revelation stunned me. Of all the changes I might have expected, this concrete action spoke volumes about Melissa's seriousness. By the time Dad was released from the hospital, a new dynamic had begun to take shape in our family. Not perfect, not completely healed, but different. There were still moments of tension, still occasions when old habits surfaced. But there was also a new willingness to acknowledge these patterns when they appeared, to course correct, rather than double down. Dr. Wilson helped me navigate this evolving relationship. Remember, she advised, reconciliation doesn't mean erasing boundaries. It means creating healthier ones that everyone respects. Sarah and I invited my family to our house for dinner the weekend after Dad came home from the hospital. It was a test of sorts. Could they enter our space respectfully, acknowledging it as ours, rather than an extension of the family domain? To my relief and mild surprise, they passed the test. Mom complimented our decor without suggesting changes. Dad asked interested questions about our garden. Melissa brought a thoughtful housewarming gift. Even Stephanie behaved, making a genuine effort to connect with Sarah. As we sat around our dining table, the conversation flowing more easily than I could have imagined 6 months ago, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The past couldn't be changed, but the future remained unwritten. We were all learning, all growing, all trying to be better for each other. I'd like to propose a toast, Dad said, raising his glass of sparkling cider, alcohol now being off limits for his heart condition, to new beginnings and second chances. We all raised our glasses. To new beginnings, we echoed. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Sarah and I sat on our porch swing, her head resting against my shoulder, as we looked up at the stars. What are you thinking? She asked softly. I considered the question carefully. I'm thinking that family isn't just who you're born to, but who you choose to become with. She squeezed my hand. That's beautiful. I'm also thinking that healing isn't linear. We'll have good days and bad days with them. But for the first time, I feel like I'm part of my family because I want to be, not because I'm needed to be. Sarah nodded against my shoulder. That's the difference between love and obligation. We sat in comfortable silence for a while longer before heading inside to our home, the one we had built together, with boundaries intact and love flowing freely. The journey wasn't over. There would be more conversations, more apologies, more growth needed from all of us. But something fundamental had shifted. I had found my voice, and in doing so, had given my family the chance to hear it for the first time. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Did it lead to healing or more conflict? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more about navigating complex family dynamics with dignity and self-respect. Remember, sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's giving yourself the space to find your worth. Thank you for listening. and may you find the courage to value yourself as much as you value others. In this gripping Reddit family drama, I share how my family's devastating words, "You've ruined our lives, and we'd be happier without you," led to a painful but necessary separation. After years of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation, I finally walked away from toxic family dynamics that many Reddit family drama stories highlight. 6 months later, 19 missed calls revealed my father's heart attack, forcing me to confront the family that had taken me for granted. This powerful Reddit family drama explores setting healthy boundaries, finding your voice, and the challenging path to reconciliation. Like so many Reddit family drama stories, mine demonstrates how a crisis can either reinforce unhealthy patterns or create space for genuine healing. My journey from family doormat to respected individual offers valuable lessons about self-worth and the difference between obligation and love, a common theme in Reddit family drama communities online.